So the Reck and Long model is really a portrayal of the evolution of procurement. So purchasing at some point in time, that term would have evolved into what we know as procurement today. So in the earlier times, we this whole function, right? This whole procurement function, then called purchasing actually, right? Because of the nature of it, it was very much passive in nature, huh? Passive in nature, no strategic direction. Primarily, reacts to requests. Is anyone working in that environment? Is anyone working in that environment? Are you working in an environment where the procurement department is playing a non-strategic role? Are you working in that environment? Some old chats are there. Yes, I recognize that, but just ignore it. Please ignore it. So just please ignore that, right? Ignore that, right? So the question is this. At some point in time, were you, well, not at some point in time, but are you in a situation whereby your organization is operating in a passive mood in terms of the procurement function? When I say passive, I'm referring to, when I say passive, sorry, I meant, or I'm trying to paint the picture of an organization that does not allow the procurement function to play a strategic role. What about your organization, Charlene? What about you, Denusha? Denusha, is procurement playing a strategic role in your organization? Is the procurement function helping the company's strategy? Is that happening in your organization, Denusha? Is that happening? It is happening. Very good. So, well, that's excellent. So, right? So there are companies, unfortunately, where that still does not happen. So that is a passive mood, no strategic connection. So the organization is trying to achieve, let's say the organization is trying to reduce costs, holding costs by 25%, or the organization is trying to improve their cash flow or liquidity. But at the same time, while that is happening, procurement is not paying attention to stock holdings. So the more inventory you have is a reduction of your liquidity. More inventory means a suction of your liquidity. So there's no connection. You with me in that? Charlene, you understand what I'm saying? So it's like one person doing one thing and the other person doing another thing. So that is a passive mood, right? So there are companies that operate in a passive kind of mood, right, Denosha? So procurement, then called purchasing, as I've said, evolved into, we moved from passive to independent. So what happened then? We started to adopt some strategies and so on, but we still, or the function was still not linked to other departmental functions. So everyone was operating independently in silos. David, you understand what I'm saying? David, in some organizations, procurement, marketing, sales, all the different functions operate in silos. When I say operate in silos, what do I mean by that, Tosin? Tosin, what do I mean by operating in silos? What do I mean by that? Some organizations are operating in silos. So we would have moved from passive to independent. So there was some improvement, and some companies have benefited, have seen that, but they still operate in silos. Denusha, what do I mean by operating in silos? What do I mean by that, Denusha? What do I mean by operating in silos, Oyefolu? What do I mean? David, testing 1, 2, 3. I need some answers. What do I mean by operating in silos? What is that about? I'm saying that in the independent mode, you find that departments find themselves operating in silos. What do I mean by that? Yeah, what is operating in silos about? What is that? Yeah, so they behave, right, good. You couldn't say it better. They behave as if it's one separate unit, right? Operating in silos. So they're not complementing each other. They are not supporting each other, right? So for example, procurement and engineering. Procurement and engineering should be collaborating. All right? And Charlene is saying the requirements are taken care by the individual departments. Yes, so there's no there's no synergy among the different departments. They have to work together, right? Procurement must work closely with engineering, right? In a manufacturing firm or in an engineering firm, because engineering would advise procurement on standards and schedules and delivery dates and so on, and procurement would advise on what is available and what is not available and so forth, right? And where you can get it, etc. Right, so anyway, we move from independent to supportive. So we've had some improvements. There are companies all around that are now in the supportive mood. Supports the organization competitive strategy by adopting purchasing, but these days we say procurement techniques that strengthen its competitive position. And finally, I'm going to ask an example shortly. Finally, integrative, and this is where the big organizations shine. In large organizations like the Walmart and the even the BPs and so on, big companies, they have no choice but to integrate all functions, and they all the various business functions work together towards the benefit of the long-term objective of the company. They work together towards the benefit of the long-term benefit of the organization. All right. So that is what this is about. When we talk about the evolution of procurement, we look at it from the eyes of the Reck and Long model.